If there's one thing I've learned after 34 years on this planet, it's that being the quiet one in the family doesn't mean they'll leave you alone. Sometimes, it just means they talk over you more. My name's Cole, and for most of my life, I've been labeled the negative one, the buzzkill, the guy who ruins the mood. Not because I'm mean, not because I lash out, but because I don't pretend everything's perfect when it isn't. And in my family, that was enough to make me the odd one out. I'm not the guy who cries at movies or writes sentimental birthday cards. I don't fake laugh at bad jokes or squeal over engagement announcements like they're Nobel Prizes. But I show up. I try. At least, I used to. There's something soul-crushing about spending years being there for people who only see you as a problem to manage. I was the guy who fixed your phone, helped move your couch, lent you money when you forgot your wallet, but one sigh too many, one comment that maybe things weren't as rosy as they looked on the surface, and suddenly I was the toxic energy dragging everyone down. It started small, like it always does. I remember a family dinner when I was 23, a regular Sunday thing at my parents' house. My brother Ethan had just gotten back from some overpriced yoga retreat in Tulum with his wife, and he was glowing. Not figuratively. He literally had one of those LED face masks that made him look like Iron Man doing a skincare ad. Everyone was fawning over his new mindset and energy cleansing and manifesting abundance. I made a sarcastic joke about how I'd just manifested a parking ticket, and my mom put down her fork and gave me that look. The one that says, "Why do you always have to ruin the vibe?" I brushed it off. I was used to being the scapegoat. But over time, it became a pattern. Group chats would go quiet the second I chimed in. I'd hear about vacations after they happened. Birthdays I used to be invited to became smaller this year, just close family. And anytime I asked about it, I got the same rehearsed response. "We just thought you wouldn't enjoy it, Cole. You're always saying how you don't like crowds/travel/noise/small talk." Which, sure, sometimes I did. But they never asked. They just decided. And it hurt. I tried to adjust. I'd show up to gatherings, force a smile, bite my tongue when my sister Hailey made another passive-aggressive remark about my loner lifestyle. I'd bring thoughtful gifts, books, handmade stuff, once even a custom wooden chess set for my dad, only to see Ethan's Bluetooth speaker or Hailey's matching family pajamas get all the attention. And every time I mentioned feeling left out, I was met with condescending concern. "Maybe you need to work on your mindset," Hailey once said, clutching her toddler to her chest like I might infect him with gloom. Negativity is contagious. That one stung. I didn't talk for the rest of the night. The worst part was watching how easily they rallied around each other. Ethan would host wellness weekends at his lake house. Hailey planned family photo shoots in matching neutral tones. My parents called them anchors of the family. Me? I was the gray cloud. The reluctant RSVP. The guy who just needed therapy. Ironically, I was in therapy. Have been for years. I just didn't turn it into a personality. But the turning point, the seed of everything that would come later, was the Christmas I didn't get invited to. It was 2021. I was living in a modest apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd bought a little tree, strung up some lights, even baked cookies using my grandma's old recipe. I texted the family chat to ask what time Christmas dinner was, and no one responded. For hours. Eventually, my dad replied with a dry, "We're doing something smaller this year. Ethan's hosting." No invite. No explanation. That night, I scrolled through Instagram and saw the photos. All of them. Hailey's kids in matching sweaters. My parents smiling in front of Ethan's fireplace. Even my cousin Drew, who lived 2 states away, had made it. But not me. I wasn't even in the background of a single picture. I remember just staring at the screen, my mouth open a little, like if I looked long enough, I'd find myself there. Like maybe I was just cropped out. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat on the couch with a plate of cooling cookies and felt numb. A few days later, Hailey posted a reel titled "Grateful Moments," set to soft piano music. She captioned it, "Surround yourself with people who lift you higher, dizzy, no drama. Just love and good energy." And I lost it. Not outwardly, but something inside me broke. I realized then, really realized, that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried to vibe with them, I'd always be the outsider. The unspoken rule was clear: don't bring the mood down. Don't talk about real things. Don't be inconvenient. So I stopped trying. I stopped texting first. I stopped sending gifts. I stopped offering help. And for the first time in my life, no one chased me. Not even a miss you. It was like I had never existed. But here's the thing. Silence gave me space. And space gave me clarity. For the first time in years, I started focusing on what I wanted. I poured myself into my work, software development for a niche logistics firm, and quietly stacked money. I picked up weekend hiking again. I deleted social media. I stopped waiting for someone to notice me missing. And then, almost 2 years later, I did something no one saw coming. I bought a cabin. A real one. In the mountains, 3 hours out from the city. Full woodwork, stone fireplace, wraparound porch, thick pine trees all around it. No cell reception. No energy circles. Just peace. I paid in full. No loans. No help. Just me and a dream I'd shelved for too long. When the sale closed, I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was hiding, but because no one had earned the right to know. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Especially not when your sister randomly spots you at a hardware store buying 12 gallons of paint and a new generator. I should have known that would lead to questions. I just didn't expect the fallout to come from Ethan. It started with a text. Just 4 words. You bought a cabin? I stared at the screen for a minute before replying. Yep. He waited a few hours, then sent a second message. Wow. Didn't think you were doing that well. Congrats. Which, coming from him, might as well have been an insult. I didn't reply. I didn't think it needed one. Then, a week later, came the real message. The one that kicked off everything. Hey, wanted to ask, any chance my family could use the cabin during winter break? Kids would love it. Just us, promise. You wouldn't even have to be there. Let me know. I stared at it for a long time. Something in me, something old and raw, started to surface. But I kept my face calm. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Then typed it again. Eventually, I settled on one line. Sorry, it's just for people with good energy. I hit send. He blocked me the next day. But that was just the beginning. If Ethan blocking me was meant to be some kind of punishment, it didn't land. Honestly, it felt like relief. Like someone finally turned off a song that had been playing on repeat in the background of my life for too long. No more backhanded compliments. No more just trying to help lectures. No more pretending to be someone I wasn't just to keep the peace. But I should have known that peace, in my family, doesn't last. It started subtly. A few icy glances from Hailey when I bumped into her at the local co-op, her eyes flicking to my cart like she was scanning for judgment. I tried to nod hello, but she turned sharply, her toddler balanced on one hip like a tiny human shield. Then came the voicemail from Mom. Chipper on the surface, but with that undertone of tight-lipped disapproval I knew too well. Hi, sweetie. Just wanted to say we love that you're investing in property. Really proud of you. Just a little surprised you didn't mention it to the family, especially with the holidays coming up. Anyway, call me back when you get a chance. I didn't call back. I think that's what truly set everything in motion. Not the cabin, but the silence. For the first time in decades, I wasn't explaining myself. And for people like my parents, who controlled conversations with guilt and carefully measured concern, that was a threat. It wasn't long before my dad called directly. I let it ring, but he left a message. His tone was colder. Cole, I don't know what this attitude is about, but this family doesn't do secrets. Your brother was trying to include you. Don't punish the kids over whatever grudge you're nursing. Call me. I didn't call him either. And just like that, the narrative started to shift, behind my back, of course, but not so subtly that it didn't get back to me. Drew, my cousin, texted me a screenshot from our extended family's Facebook group, a digital nightmare I wisely stayed far away from. It was a post from Hailey. Feeling sad today. My boys were so excited about the idea of playing in the snow at Uncle Cole's new cabin. They even drew pictures. But unfortunately, some people hold on to bitterness instead of choosing love. We'll find joy elsewhere, like we always do. The comments were what you'd expect. Heart emojis. Prayers. A few shame on him s. One end even posted, negativity is a disease. Cut it out, or it'll rot your whole family. I half expected someone to suggest an exorcism. I laughed when I saw it. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe how predictable it was. The script hadn't changed in decades. Only now, I wasn't playing the part they'd assigned me. And then came the dinner. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe some masochistic part of me thought it would be different. Maybe I was tired of being the ghost in family photos. Or maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see how far the rabbit hole went. Whatever the reason, I agreed to join them for a pre-Christmas dinner at my parents' house. It wasn't the real Christmas, of course. That was happening at Ethan's chalet in Aspen. This was more of a leftover holiday, a consolation meal before everyone left for their actual plans. When I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. The room was decorated within an inch of its life. Garlands, lights, faux snow on every surface. But it wasn't festive. It was curated, like a catalog had thrown up all over the living room. Hailey's kids were wearing matching cardigans that looked itchy, and Ethan's wife was sipping something green from a crystal glass and talking about the energetic residue of processed sugar. I barely made it past the threshold before my mom hugged me a little too tightly and whispered, "Try not to be so tense tonight, okay? Let's just have a nice time." That was code. I knew it. Don't mention the cabin. Don't talk about feelings. Smile. Nod. Be useful. I sat at the end of the table. Ethan was at the head. My dad poured wine like he was hosting a diplomatic summit. And then the meal began. The jabs were subtle at first. Hailey talking about how hard it was to afford travel with just one income, glancing at me as if my entire existence was some kind of insult. Ethan mentioning how some people find peace through community, not isolation. Even my mom got in on it, asking Ethan, loudly, if he'd brought his famous gluten-free stuffing, because God knows not everyone here knows how to cook. It was like being pecked to death by ducks. But I stayed quiet. I smiled. I passed dishes. I told Hailey's daughter I liked her glittery hair clip, even though I could see her mom's eyes narrow when I spoke to her. I didn't rise to it. I didn't push back. Until dessert. We were halfway through some vegan pie abomination when my dad raised a glass and said, "To family, the ones who show up, who support each other, who don't hold grudges." And everyone raised their glasses. Except me. I sat perfectly still. Then I placed my fork down, gently, deliberately, and asked, "Is that really a toast, or just a passive-aggressive performance?" The silence was instant. Like someone had hit mute on the whole room. Ethan cleared his throat. "It's a reminder, Cole. For the kids. That family is about love. Right?" I said, turning to him. "Like how you loved me so much, you asked to use a place you didn't help build, didn't ask nicely for, and blocked me when I said no." His jaw clenched. "I blocked you because you were being petty." I raised an eyebrow. "Petty is asking for access to something you didn't even congratulate me on." Mom jumped in. "Okay, that's enough. We're not doing this here." Hailey muttered something under her breath. I didn't catch it, but her husband laughed. That smarmy kind of laugh that always makes you want to throw something. So I stood up. Slowly. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering. Not with rage. With clarity. "I'm going to go," I said. "Not because I'm angry. Because I'm tired. Tired of pretending this isn't exactly what it looks like." My dad started to speak, but I cut him off. "You didn't invite me to Christmas 2 years in a row. You talk about my energy like I'm a contaminant. You turn my decision, my right, to say no into some kind of moral failure. And now you want to sit here and toast a family." I shook my head. "No thanks." I walked to the door, grabbed my coat. Just as I was reaching for the handle, Ethan spoke up. "You think money makes you better than us now?" I turned. He was standing too, red-faced, his hand still wrapped around his wine glass. "No," I said. "I think boundaries make me free from you." And I left. The fallout started the next day. I didn't hear from anyone, not for days. And when I did, it wasn't direct. It was digital. A new post from Hailey. "Sometimes people show their true colors when you say no. We taught our kids that love means sharing. Others taught them love is conditional. Guess who they'll grow up to be?" Again, the comments lit up. Family members I hadn't seen in years weighed in. I was selfish. I was ungrateful. I was emotionally stunted. One uncle wrote, "Shame to see Cole isolate himself. He used to be such a sweet kid." That one hit harder than I expected. Because I was a sweet kid. I just stopped being sweet when sweetness got me trampled. But the real betrayal, the one that snapped something inside me for good, came a few weeks later. I was up at the cabin, finally finishing some insulation work in the back room, when I got an email from a local property rental site. A confirmation for a booking request, submitted under my name. I blinked. Then read it again. It was Ethan's wife's email. She'd tried to book my cabin for a full week over winter break using my old Gmail address, pretending to be me, listing herself as a trusted family friend. I froze. Then I checked the security cam app I'd installed on the front porch. There they were. Ethan, his wife, their 2 kids, standing at the base of my private road, looking up toward the cabin, trying to figure out why the gate wouldn't open. I stared at the footage. My hand tightened around my phone. My pulse was calm, too calm. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. They hadn't just disrespected my boundaries. They'd tried to violate them. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about being the bigger person anymore. This was about making sure they never tried it again. I didn't call the police. I didn't text Ethan. I didn't march down the hill with a camera in hand ready to film some dramatic confrontation like one of those grainy TikToks where the caption reads, "Entitled brother tries to steal my cabin." No, I stood in my cabin, in complete silence, watching the security footage as Ethan stood at my locked gate in a Patagonia jacket, arms spread like he was the one being wronged. His wife was tapping at her phone, squinting at the keypad like it was malfunctioning, and the kids were already tossing snow at each other, assuming they'd be building snowmen on my porch within the hour. I remember taking a deep breath, and then another, and then I walked over to the fireplace, stirred the logs a little, and sat down with my laptop. Because I wasn't about to just react. I was going to think. See, people like Ethan, and honestly, most of my family, thrive on emotion. That's how they manipulate you. They wait until you explode so they can point at you and say, "See, you're the problem." That had been the pattern my whole life. I'd bottle things up, try to be mature, try to not make a scene, until I couldn't anymore. And when I finally snapped, they got to play the calm ones. The rational ones. The ones just trying to keep the peace. Not this time. This time, I was going to outlast them. But first, I had to deal with what that moment actually felt like. I won't lie, I didn't sleep well that night. My mind kept going in circles. Not just about the trespassing attempt, but everything. The years of being the outcast. The forced smiles at family dinners. The Christmases spent alone. The time I helped Hailey's husband land a new job because he'd lost his. And then 3 months later, she posted a meme about how toxic people disguise themselves as helpful. It all came rushing back. And for a little while, just a few days, I broke. I skipped meals. Didn't shower. Just sat with my laptop and stared at old photos I hadn't looked at in years. Ones where I was younger. Softer. Before the lines in my face were formed by gritted teeth. Before I learned to bite my tongue, so often it practically had calluses. There was one picture. Thanksgiving, maybe 2012. I was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, with one of Hailey's babies asleep in my lap. Everyone else was at the table. I wasn't even in the group shot. Just off to the side. That's how it always was. I'd been on the edge of my own family for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be at the center of anything. And the worst part? For a moment, I wondered if they were right. If I really was just bitter, negative, cold. I sat with that thought for too long. Until one night, I heard the snow hit the windows in slow, rhythmic waves, thick, heavy flakes blanketing everything. And I stood up, walked outside barefoot, and just stood in it. The cold slapped me awake. The wind bit through my skin. But for some reason, I started laughing. Not loudly, not manically, just that soft, half-broken laugh you let out when something clicks. Because I realized something. I had a cabin I built. I wasn't the loser they made me out to be. I wasn't some drifting sad case who needed saving. I had a life, one I made with my own hands. A home in the woods. A career I loved. Friends, real ones, even if they weren't blood. And peace, glorious, deafening, soul-filling peace, which they tried to take from me. They hadn't rejected me because I was broken. They rejected me because I stopped playing the game. That night was the turning point. The next morning, I made coffee, turned on some jazz, and started to rebuild. Not just my routines. Myself. I updated all my passwords. Strengthened the gate lock system. Installed 2 more security cameras. One angled at the private trail up the hill, another over the side deck. I booked a meeting with a lawyer in town, just to go over what would count as unlawful entry versus attempted trespassing. I didn't plan to press charges, not yet. But I wanted to be prepared. I also contacted the rental site where Ethan's wife had tried to impersonate me and submitted a fraud report. I attached the security footage. Their support team was surprisingly responsive. The account linked to her email was suspended within 48 hours. Then I went one step further. I bought the domain mylastname.com and turned it into a private, invite-only booking system for close friends. Not to make money, just to have something that looked official, professional, with rules, policies, and, best of all, terms and conditions that included a firm no exceptions for family members not explicitly authorized in writing. But this wasn't just about protecting the cabin. I started journaling again. I know, sounds cliché, but there was something powerful about waking up, brewing a cup of coffee, and writing down what I really felt. No filter. No pretending. I wrote about my childhood, how I used to wait by the window for my dad to get home and hope he'd ask me to toss the football around, only for him to step right past me and call for Ethan. I wrote about the time Hailey cried at Thanksgiving and said I'd ruined everything because I'd made a comment about missing grandma. I wrote about the nights I sat alone in my apartment on my birthday while everyone else went out to dinner for Ethan's promotion. I wrote it all. And then one night, I set fire to those pages in the cabin's wood stove, watched them curl into ash, felt a weight lift. Around that time, something else changed. I started working with clients directly. No more middleman agencies. I built my own small consulting arm. Just me, a portfolio, and referrals. The extra income wasn't flashy, but it gave me more control, more time, more freedom to spend weekends at the cabin or disappear into the woods for hours without checking my phone. I'd get texts from people in town. Hey, are you still doing that software stuff? Or you helped my cousin's small business. Can I hire you? It wasn't loud success. It was quiet, steady, real. And as the weeks turned into months, something wild happened. I started laughing again. Really laughing. At podcasts. At old movies. At dumb memes from friends who actually liked me. One Saturday afternoon, I found myself in a thrift shop in a nearby mountain town, flipping through old records, when the shop owner, a woman in her 50s with bright blue hair and a voice like honey, said, "You've got a peaceful energy about you." I blinked. Me? She nodded. "You'd be surprised how many people come in here, all frayed. You're not. You're grounded." That stuck with me, because I'd spent so long being told I was the opposite. Grounded. Me. The man who once sat in silence while his entire family laughed at jokes he wasn't in on. The man who once thought being alone meant being unwanted. Now, I chose solitude. I built it. And I guarded it like it mattered, because it did. But even in my peace, I knew the storm wasn't over. Because people like Ethan don't just walk away. They regroup. They reframe. And they come back. And when they did, I was ready. There's a kind of silence you only hear in the mountains. That dense, snow-muted stillness that feels like it's listening. That's where I made my decision. Not in a rush of anger. Not from some late-night revenge fantasy. But in the calm, measured quiet of early spring, sitting on my porch with a thermos of black coffee and the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about getting back at them. Not really. Revenge, for me, wasn't a fire. It was a blueprint. And I had just spent 3 months clearing the land, metaphorically and literally. See, I'd realized something important during those long, introspective days in the cabin. I had spent most of my life playing defense. Apologizing. Explaining. Trying to soften myself into whatever version of me they'd accept. But they didn't want me to be better. They wanted me to stay less than them. Contained. Predictable. A reminder that they were doing something right. That's when it clicked. If they couldn't handle me setting boundaries, what would they do if I drew a line they couldn't even see until it was too late? So I started planning. Not in a sugar in the gas tank kind of way. That's not my style. I wanted something poetic, strategic, something that looked like peace but tasted like consequence. Something undeniable. Step 1 was simple, secure the high ground. I met again with the lawyer in town, Carolyn, mid-40s, sharp as a tack, with a sarcastic streak and a reputation for handling land disputes like a chess master. I laid out the situation, the attempted impersonation, the trespassing, the history of family conflict, and my growing concerns about future boundary violations. She nodded through it all, not blinking once. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "So, you want to build a legal wall before they try to climb back in?" "Exactly," I said. "Then let's start with a trust." She walked me through it. A private property trust, with the cabin and its land as the primary asset. But more importantly, she helped me create a list of usage clauses so ironclad they could have been carved into bedrock. No family member access without notarized approval. No temporary stays without my presence. No events, no third-party rentals, no circumvention through shell accounts. Add a clause that voids access for anyone who's ever tried to impersonate me. I added. She smirked. Personal touch. I like it. Within 3 weeks, the trust was done. The cabin's official ownership now passed through a web of paperwork that even the savviest suburban schemer couldn't unravel. Step 2. Take control of the narrative. I'd stayed quiet for years. Let them talk. Let them spin stories about my negativity, my emotional distance, my failure to stay connected. And people believe them because I let them. But silence is a weapon, especially when you break it on your terms. So I did something subtle. I posted a photo. Just one. Me, standing in front of the cabin, holding the deed folder, trust document concealed, smiling in the snow with a caption that read, "Built this with my own 2 hands, my own money, and my own peace." No loans. No handouts. Just focus. That was it. No hashtags. No tags. No bait. But the impact was immediate. Hailey liked the post within minutes, and then unliked it an hour later. Ethan's wife viewed my story for the first time in months. Then again. A mutual cousin messaged me. "Wait, did you build that?" I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The photo said everything. You excluded me. You mocked me. And I still won. But it wasn't about flexing. It was about planting seeds. Because the next part of the plan needed one key ingredient: temptation. I knew how my family operated. I knew that Ethan couldn't stand being outshined. That Hailey hated being left out of anything that looked exclusive. That my parents had spent decades fawning over whichever child looked most successful. If I wanted them to walk into a trap, I didn't need bait. I just needed a velvet rope. So I created an event. Not a party. Not a reunion. Something aspirational. I called it the Mountain Reset Weekend. I bought a simple domain. Built a sleek little landing page using a template. All soft earth tones and minimalist fonts. The header read, "Escape the noise. Reset your spirit. Realign your energy." I laughed as I typed it. Ethan-level nonsense. Underneath, I added fake testimonials. Just vague enough to sound real. Life-changing. I came back clearer than I've been in years. It's not just a getaway. It's a transformation. Then the photos, wide shots of the cabin, drone views of the mountain trail, candles flickering on a windowsill. I listed only 3 weekends per year. Invite only. No social media. No exceptions. And then I added a hidden clause in the site's metadata. Any attempts to submit the inquire form from an IP address associated with previous attempted impersonation would be logged, but not acknowledged. Just silently tracked. It was a masterpiece of subtle manipulation. The site went live. I sent the link to one person, my old college roommate Jay, now a mid-tier influencer who owed me a favor after I helped him recover a crashed hard drive that had 3 brand deals on it. I asked him to post it once, with no context, and say, "Heard good things about this place. Wild that it's invite only." And from there, I waited. Within 24 hours, the landing page had 312 views. Within a week, 2,100. One IP pinged 6 times in a row from the same suburb where Ethan lived. Another came from my parents' neighborhood. But the real tell? I got a group text from Hailey, the first in months. "Hey fam. Random question. Anyone heard about this Mountain Reset Weekend thing? I swear I saw Cole's cabin in a video. Are you involved in this, Cole?" I stared at the message, took a sip of tea, then replied, simply, "It's invitation only." She heart reacted, then nothing for days. But I wasn't done. Step 3 was surgical. I compiled every voicemail, every message, every backhanded comment. I downloaded all the security cam footage from the day Ethan tried to sneak up to the cabin. I screen recorded his wife's impersonation attempt on the rental site, plus the fraud notice from their system. Then I created a private archive on a USB drive. Not to use. Not yet. But to have. Because for the first time in my life, I was playing offense. I wasn't just protecting my peace. I was preparing to enforce it. And just when I thought the plan was working, just when the tension started to simmer from afar, when I thought I'd laid the last brick of my invisible fortress, an envelope showed up at my apartment door. No return address. Handwritten. Heavy. Inside was a folded letter. And a photo. The letter was from my mom. The photo? It was of the family. All of them. Standing in front of Ethan's house. Holding a sign that read, "Happy birthday, Cole. We miss you." And on the back of the photo, scribbled in Ethan's handwriting, "Prove you're the bigger person. Invite us to the cabin." That's when I knew they didn't get it. They still thought this was about bitterness. About pettiness. They thought I was waiting for an apology. They didn't realize I'd outgrown needing one. But I did realize something else, something important. They weren't done. They were regrouping, plotting, trying to spin it again, maybe to friends, maybe to extended family, maybe even to me. And that meant I needed to move up my timeline. Because the final phase of my plan wasn't just to protect my space. It was to redefine the entire story. I didn't call them. I didn't return the letter. I didn't even take the bait. I just stared at the photo, all of them smiling like we were still a family, like I hadn't been iced out for a decade. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a kind of cold, clean certainty. They didn't miss me. They missed the idea of me. The version that tolerated everything. The version who quietly absorbed their guilt and made space for their egos. They missed the family scapegoat, not the man I had become. So I made my final move. And this time, I didn't just shut the door. I sealed it. The idea came to me that night, as I sat by the fireplace and flipped through my journal. A line I had written weeks earlier jumped out at me. They only miss you when they need something. And that's when I decided to give them something. But not what they expected. I waited exactly 2 weeks, just long enough for curiosity to turn into confusion. Then I sent a group email to my immediate family, subject line. Access to the cabin, final notice. I knew they'd open it. The words access and final in the same sentence were like candy to people who hated being excluded. The body of the email read, "Hi all. I've received multiple inquiries regarding the cabin, as well as requests for involvement in the Mountain Reset weekend. Given the level of interest and past misunderstandings, I've decided to clarify everything in one place. As of today, the property is legally housed under a trust with explicit clauses regarding access. No family member, immediate or extended, will be granted entry, use, or promotional involvement unless otherwise authorized in a legal contract reviewed by counsel. Furthermore, any attempts to misrepresent identity, submit bookings under false pretenses, or access the property through informal channels will be treated as a violation of civil trespassing law and reported accordingly. This is not punitive. This is protective. I wish you all well. Cole." I sent it. Then I waited. And right on cue, the storm rolled in. First came the passive-aggressive replies. "Hailey. Wow. Okay. Didn't realize we needed a lawyer to spend time with our brother. My mother. We always wanted you to feel included, honey. But this tone is really disappointing. My father, ever the diplomat. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. You're better than this." And Ethan? He didn't reply. He just posted a vague Instagram story of him sipping wine on his deck with the caption, "Energy always reveals character." That one made me laugh out loud. Because while they were still stuck in optics, I was about to move into action. The first domino fell quietly. I mailed a package to Carolyn, my lawyer, with all the documents I'd compiled, screenshots, voicemails, impersonation attempts, the cabin security footage, and a notarized affidavit outlining the timeline of events. She'd already prepped the trust to be airtight, but this gave her something extra. A formal cease and desist letter addressed jointly to Ethan and his wife, citing impersonation and attempted fraud, wrapped in the velvet language of protecting our client's right to property and privacy. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. But it was enough to scare them. 2 days later, I got a flurry of texts from Hailey. "Cole, what the hell is this letter Ethan got? Are you seriously trying to sue us? What happened to family?" I didn't reply. She followed up again. "Please don't do this. It was a mistake. You're being cruel." No, I thought. I was being clear. And then I played my ace. Remember that USB archive I created? I had one more plan for it. I didn't want to go scorched earth, but I wanted the truth out there. And not just to my family. To the people who'd quietly taken their side, who'd nodded along at holidays when I wasn't there, who'd told mutual friends that I distanced myself because I was sensitive. So I reached out to my cousin Drew. Drew and I hadn't been close, but he was fair, neutral. He worked in digital media and had always been a little removed from the main family drama. We caught up occasionally, and he'd been the one to send me that Facebook screenshot of Hailey's smear post months ago. So I called him. "Hey Drew," I said, "I want to show you something. Off the record." He hesitated. "This about the cabin stuff?" "Sort of, but it's bigger than that." I sent him a zip file with a sanitized version of the archive, redacted personal data, no legal threats, just the facts. The texts, the footage, the impersonation, the timeline. He went quiet for a full minute. Then he said, Jesus, man. They really did this. I just said, people don't believe stories until they see them. Drew asked if he could write a piece for his blog, a long-form post about family estrangement, boundaries, and what it looks like when you finally stand up to the golden children. I said yes. He published it under the title, When the Negative One Walks Away, The Hidden Story of Family Scapegoats. It didn't name names, but everyone in the family knew. The post got traction, not viral, but real. And slowly, quietly, people started reaching out to me. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in years messaged. Didn't know half of that. Sorry I never asked your side. A former family friend. I used to think you were just distant. Now I get it. Even my old Sunday school teacher emailed me. Good for you, Cole. We always saw how left out you were. Proud of the man you've become. I didn't need the validation, but it helped close the loop. And then came the final fallout. I heard through the grapevine that Ethan's wife's social media accounts went private after a few comments accused her of using someone else's identity to get a vacation. Hailey deleted the post about people who choose bitterness. No apology. Just gone. My parents? They sent one last email, a joint one. We don't know who you've become, but we miss the version of you who still believed in family. If you ever decide to come back, the door is open. Until then, we'll be here. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it, folded it, tucked it into the wall of the cabin behind a support beam. A reminder. That version of me. He's not coming back. Last week, I hosted my first real mountain reset weekend. Just 4 people, all close friends. We hiked. We cooked over fire. We journaled in silence. We shared stories under starlight. Not one person asked for Wi-Fi. And as I stood on the porch that final night, watching the moonlight turn the pines silver, one of my friends asked, "Do you ever regret it? Cutting them off like that?" I thought for a long moment. Then I said, "No, because I didn't cut them off. They let me go the moment I stopped being useful." They say revenge is best served cold. But me? I prefer mine quiet. One lock at a time. One truth at a time. And the last thing I heard from any of them was the sound of a gate they couldn't open. Click.